Throughout my life, I always aim to level up and grow in as many areas as possible. As a result, I would aim to build some habits like working out consistently and reading valuable books. However, after the initial excitement of starting a new habit, procrastination would often ensue and I would stop just putting in the work to sustain these habits, especially if I'm traveling and having my daily routine disturbed. Now, in 2019, I came upon this rule known as the 2-day rule in one of Matt Diavella's videos, and it massively helped me stay consistent with some of the habits in my life. So first, thanks to Matt for sharing this concept, and second, in this video, I'll be sharing what the 2-day rule is and how I implement it in my own life, and most importantly, I'll be showcasing or giving examples in ways this rule have helped me progress in the habits that I set to maintain in my life. Hello, my name is Bahrawi, and in this channel, I share stuff that have helped me level up my life whether I am traveling or at home. So, to begin with, what is the 2-day rule? The 2-day rule is very simple. It states that you should never skip a habit 2 days in a row. So, for example, if you skip 1 day of working out, it's fine, but the key is to get back on track the next day. It's a way to stay consistent without being too hard on yourself, while still holding yourself accountable. The main idea is that missing 1 day will not kill your progress, but missing 2 days in a row could lead to a slump, which is the thing we're trying desperately to avoid. By the way, it's just called the 2-day rules for simplicity. But for example, when I was trying to maintain the habit of going to the gym consistently, my optimal schedule was going to the gym 3 times a week and not every day. So if I originally planned to go on Saturdays, Mondays, and maybe Wednesdays, and for some reason I skip my Saturday workout, the rule would dictate that I have to be there on Monday, or I would have missed 2 times in a row. And so you get the point. It's just an external way to prevent you from going into a habit slump. Now, what is the advantage of such a rule over just aiming for a daily streak of doing the habit every single day? The benefit, in my opinion, is that it allows for more flexibility and far less pressure. Daily streaks can be really stressful, and if you miss just a single day, it can be really discouraging. The 2-day rule just gives you a buffer. If life gets in the way or you just feel like you need to take a break, you can just take a break without feeling that you have ruined your streak or whatever it is. It can help you stay consistent without the perfectionism and the stress of maintaining an unbroken streak. And to be honest, when I first heard about this rule, I was kind of skeptical. But at least for me, this shit definitely works. Previously, the longest streak I have ever maintained of doing a single habit every single day was maybe a month or 2. And then I would miss a couple of days, and more often than not, I would just fall into a habit slump. But by following this rule, I legit have maintained some of the habits that I wanted to maintain for years literally at this point. For example, I believe that reading is one of the most valuable activities that anyone could do, and I have been an avid reader for years, but I mostly read novels and books that sucked me into the narrative. I always had a goal of reading non-fiction books that would help me improve some areas of my life, like investing, nutrition, etc. And whenever I started a valuable non-fiction book and I got overwhelmed with other things happening in my life, I would unfortunately fall into a reading slump and I would just abandon the book for long stretches of time, and it would be very hard to get back on track. But then I started experimenting with the 2-day rule in this particular habit, and holy shit, it did actually work. I legit have been sustaining this reading habit for years on end now. I have missed more than 2 days of reading in a row, only a handful of times in the past 2 years or something like this. And I need you to understand how massive this subtle shift was for me. It had led to a tangible, positive effect on my life. I have simply finished a number of books, valuable books, that I otherwise wouldn't have finished. And some of these books, if not all of them, have really had a positive impact on my life one way or another. Another reading related habit that I use the 2-day rule for is Readwise. Readwise is an app that organizes the highlights from the books that you read, allowing you to review them daily or whenever you want. It resurfaces highlights from different books at different time intervals that you can also set. For example, I daily review like 8 highlights from the books that I've read, and if I feel like it, I could do more reviews and more highlights every single day. And by just implementing the 2-day rule and accessing the Readwise app almost every single day, I was able to maintain this habit for more than a year now. I think that the only time that I've missed more than 2 days in a row of using the Readwise app is during November 2023 when I had like a massive exam coming up. And they were actually the 2 days just before the exam. So, how do I actually implement the 2 day rule into my own life? So, normally I just use a habit tracker app on my phone to track my daily or weekly habits. Whenever I'm starting a new habit, I would just add it to the app and like set reminders for this specific habit. That is, if it's just something small like reading on my Kindle or just accessing the Readwise app for my daily highlights. And to be completely honest, some of the habits have become so ingrained into my life that at this point I just forget opening the habit tracker app to check them off because I do them almost every single day at this point, especially the habits that do not require any pre-planning like reading or doing my highlights and stuff. I just know mentally now that if I missed a day of reading, for example, the other day, the next day, I would just have to read at least 5 pages so I don't break that 2 day streak or whatever that I have going on. It's just ingrained into my mind at this point. Of course, this is just me. You can use an app, pen and paper, or just keep track of your habits in your mind. Really, it's whatever motivates you the best and helps you just sustain your habits. Now, the next point I want to share is not necessarily specific to the 2 day rule. It is just a small thing that has helped me maintain my habits sustainably over the years. And it is just to keep things simple. In this specific context, this could be reflected in 2 ways. The first is lowering the threshold. This means that for me, to say that I am able to check off the reading habit, for example, on my app, I just need to read 5 pages instead of saying like I have to read for 30 minutes straight. And in many days, I actually end up reading for more than 30 minutes straight. It is just that the low bar makes it less daunting, especially in the days where you just don't feel like doing it. The second point is being conscious, really conscious about the habits that you introduce into your own life. Again, this is not specific to the 2 day rule, but in the past, I found that whenever I tried to introduce a bunch of big habits at once, I usually ended up not sticking to all of them. And just after a couple of weeks or even a couple of days in some instances, I would feel that it's just a bit too much to keep sustaining all of these habits at once with everything going on with my life. So I found that by just introducing one thing I want to track or just one habit I want to sustain at a time, I was much more likely to be able to sustain this habit long term. And once this habit is firmly established and ingrained into my life, I would then introduce one habit and rinse and repeat the whole process. And by the way, not everything that I have used this rule for is a habit that I wanted to sustain long term. For example, in some months, I would just want to work more on my primary job. So I just set the goal of like 3 hours daily of pure work or whatever the goal is. And I would use the 2 day rule for this as well. It just really depends on whatever is going on in my life and what projects I am currently doing. So it's really dynamic. So in conclusion, with this rule, I have seen notable progress in my life that I otherwise wouldn't have achieved, or at least would not have achieved this quickly. I finished dense books that were a little bit boring to read, but were enormous for my growth. I maintained clean nutrition and did loads and loads of workouts that I otherwise wouldn't have done. Of course, this is just a tool or like a framework to help you. If I'm literally sick or have something pressing that would prevent me from doing the habit, I would just skip it. And I always try to remind myself that it's more about doing something consistently and maintaining a habit and progressing in life rather than keeping a theoretical streak. At the end, I would like to thank you for watching and wish you a nice rest of your day.